Hey, what's going on, everyone? It is David Palmer, the Leo King, and this is Deep Astrology, your weekly astrology forecast we are doing this for June the 5th of the lunar eclipse in Sagittarius through Tuesday, which I think is going to be June the 9th of 2020. We usually do the show on Wednesdays. I was not able to do it on Wednesday, and I'm not covering Thursday since it already is Thursday night. And I thought that I would spend more time on this lunar eclipse, which is one of 3 eclipses that we're about to have here in the next 30 days. And especially in 2020 here being such an intense time and an intense year, I definitely wanted to spend some time and give everybody the quality and the time to really look at the beginning of this eclipse cycle and all the other events that are happening as well. To always support and to help, especially when I always give out a lot of this information to the whole entire world, check out highvibe.tv and be a member to get my daily video horoscopes, my weekly sun sign horoscopes, my weekly intuitive, my weekly tarot. Plus, we have a new series, and we just put it on YouTube as well. You can check it out. It's called History in the Stars. We just did episode 1, and it's super cool. Went in to look at the mysterious energy of demonology and the King James Bible. So it's a pretty cool new series we're doing here at High Vibe and bringing out to you on my YouTube. And also, you know, there's so many other cool shows that we do on highvibe.tv and on our app. So make sure that you check it out. Just go to highvibe.tv or download any of the apps on your iPhone, Android, Roku, or you can also get it on Apple TV. Amazon Fire is almost out. We're dealing with some Amazon issues. We all have Amazon issues. Anyway, this is the week where we have had a Venus retrograde conjunct the sun. Some people call that Cassini, of course, or inferior conjunction. And this has brought out a lot. The big squares to Mars, which are in, such a powerful pressure position when we get a lunar eclipse now, that's all going to be squaring Mars. So Mars is actually a huge part of 2020. And part of today's deep astrology is going to be understanding a much more deeper element of why Mars is so important about these times and about what's also coming up for the rest of the year. And we've already seen so much of this Mars energy in the way that the world has been, not only by the re-identifying energies that has switched from what we've seen at the beginning of 2020 to now it's all about a lot more complex things, but it's been about this kind of more Martian, more, of course it's warlike, it's much more, intense violence, but at the same time, it's also the strength that we find spiritually too. So we're seeing, and that I think is getting facaded right now by things that are on TV and so forth about the strength and the unity of Mars and Pisces that we find in our solidarity as a collective, which I think is in some ways not being fully shown. That's the whole part of where we can't get too frustrated with Mars here in Pisces as it squared Sun and Venus, which happen to conjoin in a Venus retrograde that only happens once every 8 years in Gemini. That was a lot of this pressure kind of peeking out about our values and relationships and so forth. And the story now continues, but without the Mars square and without the Sun, which are very kind of harsh and intense energies for Venus. So, we're going to see a lot more, I would think, civilized understanding about those issues. But it's not over yet because beliefs are where everything is at, and opinions and perspectives, with the South Node being in Sag, and we have a lunar eclipse in Sag. Now, this is going to be the first eclipse here of this section of eclipses, and this is going to be one with now the North and the South Node happening to be in Gemini and Sagittarius. Remember that the eclipse cycle that we just had to start 2020 was actually one with a solar eclipse that happened to be on December 25th, which was of 2019 with the South Node in Capricorn, North Node in Cancer, and that was with Jupiter, and Jupiter in its fall position and with the South Node. And then we had that really harsh lunar eclipse in opposition in Cancer, of course, but it was in opposition to Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn as they were conjoining for the first time in 500 years. So, it's one of those things where this eclipse, it doesn't fully get us out of all the eclipse energy that was 6 months ago, but there is something to say that it does change the chapter of eclipses. So this is definitely going to be a much different energy for the rest of the next 6 months, but there's still a hanging kind of, whether you want to call that a hanging chad, about the understanding of all the events that have taken place at the beginning here of 2020. So you have to remember that this is going to be a time in our lives now that we have to look at facts. It's Gemini, and we need to maintain some sort of middle ground here to understand and be able to look at both sides. Because one of the problems with a South Node in Sag, and especially a lunar eclipse now in Sag, is beliefs becoming only about one-sided issues. Everybody starts to become that the opinion and the perspective of things take a word and turn it around, or take a sentence and turn it around the way that you want to see things, the way that you want to see the facts, the way that you want to hear the message. And I think that this is very important for people right now to know that because we are coming into a triple eclipse cycle here, that means it's going to be a lunar eclipse, then it's going to be a solar eclipse on June 21st, the solstice with the North Node right on top. That's pretty much almost a total eclipse, okay? And this one's happening on a solstice. Pretty gnarly. Then to follow it with another lunar eclipse, which is going to be in Cancer and Capricorn, with a full moon lunar eclipse in Capricorn. And we've been dealing with those for the last couple of years, especially since the nodes entered into Cancer and Capricorn in the end of 2018. So I just want to let everybody know that the Cancer Capricorn story is definitely not over, especially as Saturn in Aquarius is in retrograde, and it's coming back into Capricorn at the end of this month. We have Jupiter and Pluto, which are within less than 2 degrees now in retrograde. Jupiter, the biggest planet, and Pluto might be tiny, might be one of the smallest planets, and most people in the science community do not consider it a planet, but its power is just as great as any bigger planet like Jupiter, I would say, for how small it is in the invisible world. It's the bringer of life and death. It is the great transformational equalizer in life. So that aspect has 3 conjunctions, and that second conjunction is happening here at the end of June. And so the fact that all of this crazy intense aspects of a Jupiter-Pluto cycle going to meet up again in the middle of these eclipses, that Saturn's going to retrograde out of Aquarius and retrograde back into Capricorn, back into its true home sign at the end of June, while we're in the middle of these eclipses, this is not the end of what you've seen of craziness of 2020. Now let's just break down this one that's happening Friday, June the 5th. And of course, we're about to go into the charts. And I know this is a little different. Usually you hear me, talk about all these things at the beginning. But you even see me here with a different microphone here because I really want to sit down and go through these charts with you all. But I want to say that when you look at this lunar eclipse, it's exactly square Mars. Now, why did I say earlier that Mars is so important to the rest of 2020? Well, Mars is now halfway through Pisces. And you know what's ironic is Mars right now in Pisces has come through where Mercury retrograded in Pisces in February into March of this year, when all the stuff going on about the pandemic came out around the world and affected the world, and also the confusion. So it's almost like Mars activated that Mercury retrograde in a different way now. And also at the same time kind of pushed that whole talk about the pandemic completely to the side, right? Mars comes in and goes, I'm going to get what I want. And goes, blah, and Pisces, like, I don't want to think about that or talk about that right now. This is what to be looked at. But it doesn't mean that, that whole aspect of that whole thing is just going to go away. Once Mars gets out of this zone and gets out of where Mercury went retrograde and so forth, now we're going to be dealing with both more intensely. And I do want to remind people that Mars here, square the sun, square the moon in a lunar eclipse is really intense and not very easy because Saturn is making the weirdest angles throughout this whole entire lunar eclipse. And the reason why I say Mars is not done, and I'm going to get back to that Saturn, is because Mars is now getting ready to come into Aries at the end of this month, where it will stay until the beginning of 2021 because Mars is going to retrograde September, October, into November in Aries. The last time it did that was 1988 when, and I've said it before, in October of 88, when it opposed the sun in Libra, is when Reagan said, the only way we're going to fix this world is if maybe people came together through an alien attack. That's not, quote, verbatim, but there is some sort of event this fall coming up that all the things we're seeing right now that we've seen in 2020 is based upon this Mars transit. And it's really weird because you can feel it in many ways if you tap into that it's all leading towards this major pressure that's happening in the universe right now to push us all into this summer, into the fall, where everything's going to have to conjoin and be totally understood. And this is stuff that's been going on since the South Node and Neptune met in Pisces in 2016, right? Because that's actually where Mars is during this whole entire cycle. Is Mars right now is in the zone of where years ago Neptune was and the South Node was. And what we've saw in the last week is Mars cross over that point. And to see what we're about to see with Mars being the big deal, since technically now that Venus has crossed the sun, and if we actually look at it from an astronomical point of view, it's been more like Venus has now passed the Earth. It just went past us. That's what the inferior conjunction is, meaning the only two planets that can join in an inferior conjunction are Mercury and Venus. That's it, because they are the only two planets that are in between range of the sun and us. So Venus just passed us as we're looking at the sun. Like, oh, it's going faster because it goes around the sun faster than us. And I do want to say that Mars now is trying to force itself to be heard. Not only in this lunar eclipse, but it's about to go do a retrograde in its home sign of Aries, which we haven't seen since '88. So I'm just preparing people that ego, war, violence, identity, people pushing for wanting to be pushing what needs to be said or what needs to be heard, especially when it's in Gemini and Sag. This lunar eclipse is popping that lid and going to change people's perspectives, change people's minds, change people's ideas of how things look, and also create a lot of forcing upon people to go, well, what action do I need to take in my life? And it's North Node in Gemini. It's about your own personal environment that needs to change. But if you get lost with this full moon, and I will use, because I am an astrologer who will always give credit to the astrologers in life that always say a certain term or something instead of not crediting them, like we're seeing right now with all the memes out there trying to say that Rome fell with Neptune and Pisces, and jacking from all of us astrologers that have said all these combinations of planets, and I'm not even using Rome because that thing is all bullshit. I'm just saying that Christopher Tecchi, one of my greatest mentors, always called the full moon a wolf in sheep's clothing. And when I remember hearing him tell me that in 2008, I was always like, because it really is, right? It is a little bit like a wolf in sheep's clothing because of the fact that it's trying to seduce us, the moon, that it has all this light, that it has all this energy, but it only gets it from the sun. It doesn't emit light itself, the moon. And with a South Node moon, lunar eclipse, that's a problem because that's an illusion already, the South Node. And then you're adding the illusion that the moon, why do you think the moon rules the subconscious, especially before like Neptune was found? Because of the fact that it rules these emotional waters in our life that we suppress, that we choose sometimes subconsciously to act out emotionally. And when it's in Sag, it's your beliefs, it's your perspectives, it's your religious beliefs. It's so much of what just comes out. And what is Sag? It wants to expand. It wants more. It never gets enough of life. It wants to experience. It wants to adventure. And it's ready. It's almost like Indiana Jones, like, at 112 years old, like on oxygen, like, I'm ready to go out there. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, dude, maybe you should sit down for a second. The facts say that you probably won't make it, and your oxygen tank only has 9 hours on it. And that's if I give you the best one, bro. No, I believe. I don't know why You guys know I like to bring comedy into this because I think in the world today we've just lost so much of that. But Pablo Francisco, my favorite stand-up comedian, always brought up, like it was back in 2000, I think 5 or 6. He was in Irvine where I grew up. And in one of his stand-up routines, he was saying, like, has anybody ever tried Viagra? He's like, imagine that, being an old guy. Like, could you hook up with an old guy that took Viagra? And he's like, you know, going to the techno clubs, like, you, and you, with me, you know? Like, that's a full moon lunar eclipse in Sag with the South Node. The old guy, he can just pop some fucking Viagra and think he can go to the techno club and fucking pick up on a bunch of chicks with his walker. Like, factually, no. Unless maybe the facts would have to show that is he literally got a fucking huge wallet with a bunch of cash and he's like, I'll fucking just give cash to anybody who wants to love me. Because the facts show that that might happen unless you're Hugh Hefner with a Playboy mansion. And then we saw all the truth come out when he passed away about what he was really doing to keep those girls there and stuff. More than just the money. The Quaaludes that were still there from the 70s on dishes. Like, you got to remember, like, you can't at this moment right now just start to turn yourself, especially with Mars here, which rules the hero. But in Pisces, it becomes this like subconscious avatar, heroic identification of self that you think that you can become out of nowhere. Or it becomes the victim of, oh man, I just never can become who I want to be. I'm never going to be who I want to be, because what does Mars rule? Rules Aries. And where's Chiron? It's in Aries. And where's Mercury during this eclipse? Squaring Chiron. And that Mercury in Cancer is in shadow, because Mercury retrograde's coming too in the middle of these eclipses, which I forgot to bring up. Not this one, but the next two. So we're getting ready for a Mercury retrograde now. And if you already thought things were crazy, remember February and March of this year with the Mercury retrograde in Pisces? Although I don't think it's going to be as weird because of the Mercury retrograde. I think it's going to be more of the eclipses. I think it's going to be more of the Saturn and Jupiter-Pluto energies. And that brings me back to Saturn. And that's what I'm going to have to probably show you in the chart, because that's why I need to go extend it into the charts. Because for some people with astrology, it's just too much unless I show you. But Saturn is making its Ceci square to the sun on this lunar eclipse. A 135-degree angle, bang, to the sun. Then it's making it semi-squared to the moon. Then it's making a semi-square to Mars. So if we look at this, these are all these very weird angles, but they're not good. And we're already dealing with the T-square of a lunar eclipse on Mars in Pisces. So that brings out craziness. It brings out people to become volatile and not pay attention to what's going on. And it also makes people in your spiritual life realize it's like, are you really the person that you really want to be, or have you suppressed yourself because of some sort of illogical belief system? Like, my parents want me to be this way, so I'm going to be this way. Or my religion tells me to be this way, so I have to be this way in every place in my life. You know who was born under this eclipse cycle? Somebody's popping guns off there. No joke. That's the world we live in right now. But is President Trump, lunar eclipse in Sag, South Node, North Node, Gemini. He had Mars in a positive angle, though, on the rising on Regulus. So that's how he can get slip through the cracks and make it through life. And people always think that he'll be taken down. He won't, because of that Mars Regulus and Leo rising in Regulus. But this is opposite with the fact that Mars is in a negative aspect to this lunar eclipse. So this would be like, I know I bring up triggering stuff. A lot of people are triggered by Trump. But like, this would be like Trump as if Mars was in Pisces. It would have been like every fear you ever had in your life actually coming true about Trump, if that makes sense. You know? But because he has Mars in Leo and it's in good aspects to the lunar eclipse, it's like, it's more of a trigger that he does do what he wants, and people subconsciously are almost affected by that, because it's a reflection on you and yourself that maybe you don't get it done the way you want it to get done. And I'm just being real. because this is what this lunar eclipse is where is your deep subconscious holding back your life because of some stupid belief or some projection that you have about the world and how you think it should look. Because this is going to bring up, where's all your should, woulds, and it could, and it has to, and it has to look like this. It's like a crazy director who's like, unless it looks this exact way, then I can't, it will not happen. I can't, I will not, I shouldn't, I couldn't, it wouldn't be. This is the trigger. And I'll be honest, this thing is triggering war with Mars. And because I already know where Mars is about to head, right? It's about to head into Neptune. And then it's going into Aries, its home sign, where it's going to stay for over half a year. That this is almost like war on all fronts in our life. And this thing is not going away. All the things that have happened in 2020 and everything, we haven't even reached. Sure, I'd say we'd reached the peak of the most backdrop of Pluto coming down to the solar system's ecliptic and striking Saturn in a conjunction point in an actual alignment with the sun, and now Pluto going into the underworld. That we have all been pushed by Pluto. And if you don't believe in Pluto, astronomers or scientists out there or anybody who are skeptics of astrology, go look it up. Go watch Pluto and Saturn meet up on January 12th. Go look at it on a scientific, astronomical 3D map. Go look at it. Go look at a planetary map. And Pluto just pushed Saturn, which rules the reality, down. So it's in many ways, people have to realize, instead of getting lost into beliefs or lost into the end of the world or lost into prophetic, Q is going to save the day, or this person saving the day, or, you're going to realize at the end of this whole entire show, that's what it is. We're watching a show in our lives. That all of it was, where did you get stuck into the story and not look through the facts, not look through who's really telling the truth? There's deception everywhere because this lunar eclipse does square Neptune. And Mars is about to head into there. There could be some deception exposed, but at the same time, it's also, people are doubling down on deception. But again, a lot of this is going to be about subconscious belief systems being projectiled all over the place right now. And the only way to protect yourself right now is to be in a Gemini position, to find some sort of laughter, to find some sort of curiosity, to try and weed through the projections and weed through the belief systems or the perspectives and go, is that really factual? Is it just because they're a Republican? Is it just because they're a liberal? Is it just because that's the religion they were taught? Is it just because that's the way life is? And that's what's hard about this time, because being a speaker and putting out information right now is truly at the, I would say, at the most dangerous position due to people's projectile vomiting of subconscious beliefs and shit that's more of an illusion than fact. Let's take a look at this. I know that one might be a little bit hard to hear, but that's just truth. And I'm not here to use astrology today to start just trying to say what's true and what's not true, because that's not the job of this show. But this show is you need to all ask yourself in every situation that's going on in life right now, including mainly in your own life, where are you self-deceiving yourself? whether we want to look at psychology and how it was in the early, 20th century, it's been proven that you can go, and a lot of this comes from some of Jordan Peterson's lectures, but one of the greatest ones I think he did is about that people can break an arm or a leg in life, right? And it can hurt really bad, but it somehow mends together, comes back, and you can walk on it again and pretty much live your life without, you'll have maybe moments of like, well, it was maybe falling down the stairs. Maybe you'll come by the stairs and be a little freaked out. But the greatest thing that affects people in their lives is deception, lying to yourself, being lied to and deceived by another person, being in a relationship that's in a lie because you're living in this false identity of how it should look, and you're doing it because you want to look good for your family, for your religion, for all these different things. And what does that create? It creates you deceiving yourself. It creates you deceiving another person because you're being fake. And that's what this lunar eclipse is to me, is that the greatest mental health aspect of all time. Because if you look at this chart, and actually we can take a look at it right now if you're cool with it, Craigie. June 5th, here is the lunar eclipse. It's going to happen at 12:12 p.m. on the West Coast. Is you're dealing with a North Node, a Sun, a Venus here, retrograde in Gemini. That's 3. You're dealing with Mars and Neptune here and squared to that. That brings it to 4-5. And then you're dealing with the moon in exact opposition, and you're dealing with the South Node, 6-7, immutable energies. So what does that mean? Well, we're dealing with a very hard transit because we're dealing with a transit that has to deal with mutability. And we're dealing it with Neptune, which has to deal with mental health. And the greatest mental health crisis in this world is, one, the deception that's out there in the world, being told to people. And 2, the deception you're telling yourself. And I would put this actually as the underlying thing. And now I am not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but I'm giving you the perspective from how lots of early 20th century psychologists got a lot of their information, whether it was Carl Jung or whether you want to go into different Freudian beliefs or whatever you want to go into, using astrology to try and understand this, is that the greatest underlying mental health condition right now is the biggest deceiving lies and beliefs that you're telling yourself about your relationships. Number 1, Venus retrograde. The biggest lies you're telling yourself about the things that you value in your life, the things that you need to buy to make you feel better, the things that you are telling yourself about what doesn't feel good in your life. And we're all part of it. Nobody's better than anybody at this point. Nobody's like, well, I've dealt with my subconscious shit better than other people. No, we are all under the spell of our own selves, while also having to break the spell of the outer world that is deceiving the world completely. There is a force out there that is deceiving the world, that is hurting people. And I've been saying this for a long time. And I've been especially saying it for years. And I thought it was really ironic because finally it was just, I think, last night I heard on the news that because of the COVID crisis and all this stuff that's gone on, that when it comes to corporations now and what they're doing, like they're trying to defund certain places and they're trying to get people to come to work for them. And I've been saying that the biggest fear and threat to the world, not just to people in America, based off the transits, is corporate slave camps. Now, erase the camp, because that whole idea of a camp, I don't think we would ever see, because everything's been renamed. If you watch my 2020 What's Next video, all the pacts that's been made with states are the same in 1856, where Neptune exactly was right now at 20 degrees of Pisces, that were called X, the Nebraska-Kansas Act, which brought out bloody Kansas, and it was all about slavery. It was all about people voting twice to 3 times by jumping the border into Kansas, because Nebraska was a slave state and Kansas was not, and Nebraskans came over to Kansas and double and triple voted to try and get slavery in Kansas and caused a bloodbath. Go do your history. What do you think's happening right now? And I'm not coming from a left or a right perspective. Just coming from a perspective of Neptune at 20 degrees in Pisces last time, and it comes retrograde here after the solar eclipse that's coming. So I'm just trying to tell you all that, like, one, let's not repeat double voting stuff, whatever it's going to take. Don't start doing it because you're trying to pick a side. Let's just look at history. And that's where I'm coming from. And that's why High Vibes started bringing out documentaries about history with using and with actual, especially Anne is a PhD and a history professor. Okay. It's not like we're just getting history from random places in life. But you have to realize that, are we going to go replay Bloody Kansas? Did we just go replay that in 1856? In the states that happen to all be the same as far as political party? People need to really start to wake up, because this is a gnarly lunar eclipse, and let's get to those reasons, because I'm just going to be real. This is no fun thing here. Here it is. I want to do it from this point of view. Okay, so 15 degrees with this sun of Gemini. So we're halfway through Gemini, and look at that Venus has already come off it within 2 days at 12 degrees. So Venus is going in retrograde still. Remember, it's going to come back to 5 degrees of Gemini, which would actually be right here. So, okay. And stop and come direct here at the end of June on the 25th. So this is 15 degrees sun, and here's this moon at 15 Sag. So there's the opposition, okay? I'm going to get rid of it so you can just see it. Now here's Mars, 15 degrees Pisces. It's making an exact T-square, we call this, and I think we're going to have to go a little bit darker. Yeah, we'll go gray. So, okay, this is creating a T-square. Exact. Very intense pressure, and it's on Mars and Pisces, and Neptune's right there. So when you get these two together, it's already lost projections of ego, violence, and this lunar eclipse is just going to trigger that now, you say? Yeah. Now it is. It's not over at all. I think it's going to get much more widespread about more of the world. And I've been predicting more about wars, to be very honest. Mercury here, 9 degrees of Cancer, squaring Chiron in Aries, as already Chiron's not happy in Aries, and Aries isn't happy to have Chiron there. Because it's humility of whatever we feel in our egos and our identification. And it's identification humility. It's ego humility. And when you get Mercury here in Cancer in shadow, where Mercury's in a retrograde and keep hitting Chiron, now we're trying to emotionally express ourselves and have to be at the most humble place of our life and the most humble place that we can be. And it's hard. But the good news is Mercury is in great sextile here with Uranus and Taurus. So you have to remember that there is this, okay, I can actually, if I do just get through my own ego issues and drop them for a second, instead of keep holding on to, my ego's identification of life, I'm fucking guilty of it. I went crazy on my Instagram yesterday because I had shit that didn't go right in my life, but I just didn't feel good about a lot of things. And Sun-Venus conjunction, inferior conjunction, Cassini, it burns out Venus. Nobody feels good about anything, really. So, but Uranus is in Taurus. It's trying to say, like, just disconnect and connect to the people, connect to the collective, and connect to the universe, and connect to the world, and connect to the relationships that you emotionally want to connect with in your life, and stop connecting to the emotional things you don't want to. That's all it is. Uranus is very simple, but it becomes very complicated in people's life. It's either you turn your back to it or you turn your front to it. That's it. Get a little foreigner, cold as ice. That's all you got to be, is a little cold as ice, and turn around and move in a different direction, or move towards it and connect. And with Mercury in Cancer, you've got to bring your emotions out. And there's no more North Node here. So Mercury's like the leader of the pack of all the planets. Look at this. Imagine the planet's like a train. All right. By the way, pretty much, except for this moon, but once this moon comes after this weekend, all the planets will be on just one half of the zodiac. There's a whole half a pizza with no planets. There's a whole 180 degrees, no planets. That's tight. That's tight quarters we're living in, and under Mercury and Gemini, the North Node in Gemini, it is tight quarters. It is pressure too. But it also means that we have to learn to get along with everybody, because everybody's fucking slammed in the same spot. It's almost like people have forgotten about how big this world is, but it feels so tiny now. And you already have your inner world, where I keep saying, start focusing on not letting the trash compactor pack your life, since already the world's doing this as a trash compactor. But again, this is where these people in life right now, and through a lunar eclipse in Sag, and with this emotion super high, with the Chiron square to Mercury, feeling the victim energy, and Mars and Pisces with Neptune there, feeling like I've been given bad hand, I've been given the wrong thing, God isn't ever supporting me. And this whole over hope about things too, like getting way too hopeful about things that are actually doors that aren't bringing anything into your life. So think about this lunar eclipse. Keeping a door open in your life because of some sort of belief system, some sort of, perspective of life. I'm going to keep this door open. Let's say it's a person. I'm keeping this door open for this person, and they never fucking show up. I'm going to stay hopeful. The data shows that they never show up. That's what this Sun, Venus retrograde, North Node, and Gemini are trying to say. And even Mercury in Cancer. I don't feel good because they don't show up. There's no facts. Because now that the North Node is in Gemini, well, the dispositor of Mercury in Cancer would be this Gemini energy, especially because Mercury is the ruler of Gemini. And so it's like the facts are not making me feel good that the person is not coming into my life. But my South Node in this lunar eclipse is I'm emotionally trying to keep the door open. But I'm not looking at the facts because I'm hopeful. And this is not a time where hopeful energy is really going to work out for people. I'm just going to be very blunt, especially with Mars squaring the Sag energy and a South Node in Sag. Like, you cannot be hopeful for non-factual things that are not showing up in your life right now, or trying to keep the door open when nothing comes, when there's only very few doors that we can even open in our lives in the moment. So it's like if you were with the genie in Aladdin, right? Like, and it was the Robin Williams one, not the Will Smith one, because the Robin Williams one was the original, who had the whole pizzazz, and you have only 3 wishes, and these are the only ways that these wishes can be done. And you can't wish for this, and you can't wish for that, but you can wish for this. Okay, right? Are you going to use 2 of your wishes on doors right now in your life? A job, a situation, or maybe the government or something? It'll be taken care of. Whew! Are you in for a rude awakening? That this Gemini energy is going, where do the facts say that this is what I want in my life? Venus retrograde in Gemini, Sun in Gemini, and with the square to Mars, you know what? This doesn't make me feel good. I'm frustrated. That door's not opening. Or you're going to be like, well, I'm frustrated, but I'm going to keep the door open because I'm blind and I believe in some prophetic thing that this door will eventually open the way I want it to see. No. 2020 is about individuals learning how to actually look at the facts and look at the data and look at where the emotions are and go, fuck, we got to make some sort of change here, and I got to look at the facts and not build my beliefs off factless information. Not buy into things until I've seen all the facts. not buy into, even in the media, right? Neptune. What does Neptune rule? The media. It looks like a fucking antenna. You know, let me use like an old school way. Like, there you go. That's Neptune. It looks like the freaking media. Why? Because it is that energy of trident from Poseidon. And antennas come from the under of the water where the sea monsters are. And it's not Little Mermaid down there anymore. And this lunar eclipse is squaring the media, so that means that the media is playing with people's perspectives. Now, this is where I'm going to get to the craziness of Saturn that might be a lot for people to handle, but it's what's going on this lunar eclipse. Here's Saturn at 1 degree of Aquarius. That means it is making an exact 45-degree angle to this lunar eclipse. It is making an exact 135-degree angle here, making a Ceci square or Ceci quadrant to the sun at 15. It is making a 45-degree angle to Mars at 15 degrees. In between Saturn and Uranus, the midpoint between both these positions is where Mars and Neptune happen to be. So we call that a midpoint. Okay, like the midpoint between 15 and 12 is 3. What is half of 3? 1.5. So you would add 1.5 to 12, 13 and a half, because 15 degrees would be 13 and a half. You get the exact math if you use the seconds though, but we're not going to use it with the minutes. So, but let's just add that 1.5, right? You're at 13 and a half degrees. So if there was something at 13 and a half degrees, it'd be hitting the midpoint of the sun Venus. Well, the midpoint of Saturn and Uranus, which are the two rulers of Aquarius, is the media and Mars and the war that the media is creating, or the deception of a war. It also could mean, especially as well with the South Node here in Sag, this deals with foreign energies. You can't trust or believe every foreign energy at the moment or every foreign thing. Look at how everybody already is kind of weird about it. It also means that travel is not a safe place. International travel. Just being real. Especially with the Mars square. So if you have international travel plans over the next month and a half, 2 months, I would definitely think twice. And I would definitely, with Mars and Aries, with energies of Uranus and Taurus. And this is where I'm going to hit this meme thing. Because I think the meme says, is it ironic that at this time we have Pluto and Capricorn during the revolution? And I think they use Neptune and Pisces for the fall of the Roman Empire. And then I think the top one is, I forgot which one it's. Oh, you just sent it to me? On my phone? No, I people mentioned me in it today, but it came off. It blows my mind because people are really lost in fake astrology now. Like, that's what's happening, is fake astrology for the first time in our lives being spread to the world. I think it's good to wake people up, but they should probably get the real info, which is the real info. Uranus, last time I was in Taurus, was during the time of World War II and the rise of Hitler and the rise of fascism. It's also the rise of leaders who change things like books and so forth. King James was crowned during Uranus and Taurus. The 6th of Scotland, the 1st of England. So you got World War II with Uranus and Taurus. You've got Pluto. Oh, the Rodney King thing is the LA riots. So Saturn in Aquarius and Mars in Pisces. Okay, yeah, it is. But you have to add the other elements of a World War II energy, and the Pluto in Capricorn is true. Yes, the time of the Revolutionary War, as far as the Boston Tea Party after the Boston Massacre that was years prior, and the development of the Navy, which came in 1775, the Continental Navy, and then the Continental Congress came together to form the Declaration of Independence in 1776 with Pluto and Capricorn. That's all true. But Neptune in Pisces is not about the fall of Rome. I think it was either, I forgot which astrologer did post it. Maybe it was Peter Novak. I don't remember which astrologer it was. It wasn't. I think it was a Neptune and Pluto conjunction in like another sign. It was not Pisces, and it was not because of Neptune and Pisces. Neptune and Pisces was the division, and it is the division, and it probably was a division in Rome. Somebody just found a different date. But did the Roman Empire ever really fall, or did it fall into the Catholic Church? Because the Catholic Church took over as Pope, I think it was Leo the Third, or it was Pope Gregory, in 800, became the first leader and ruler, emperor of Rome and Pope of the Catholic Church. That there was no true fall of Rome. Sure, Rome was sacked by the Goths, but Rome lives through the Catholic Church, and Rome lives through America, through the Senate, and having the way that the government's done, and having even the buildings look like it's Rome again. Do you really think Rome ever fell? Neptune and Pisces, though, is civil war in America. The build-up to it, 1856 through 1861 of Neptune and Pisces at the last decan. I've talked about this for fucking years. So you have the Civil War, you have World War II, and you have the Revolutionary War all happening at the same time. And, by the way, Uranus and Taurus was there because every major war that America's been in, so people get a little bit better perspective, is Uranus leaving Taurus and coming into Gemini. The Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, Uranus and Gemini. The whole start of the Revolutionary War with Pluto and Capricorn. Uranus and Gemini. World War II. World War II. And Civil War. That's what's coming. But I think that people were taking, yes, the Saturn in Aquarius, yes, the Neptune, and the Mars in Pisces as, okay, yeah, those are two events that are rare to happen. A 2-year transit around the sun and a 28.5-year transit to happen around the sun, right? Yeah, that's rare, and that's happened. But not as rare and not as powerful by just blanketing a whole entire society from falling from a planet that's every 165 years that comes into a sign. Or even the Declaration of Independence being signed because of Pluto and Capricorn. Like, sure, that just means Pluto's returning in the chart. Like, so this whole idea that people are now throwing it off as a meme and not giving all the info about it, and it's being spread out for astrology without even checking. Like, where's your date of the fall of Rome? Where was it in Pisces? Why? Do you have the facts behind it? Was there other planets connected to it? And also at the same time, during 1992, you have to remember when Saturn came into 1992 came into Aquarius, right? At that time, you had Uranus coming right behind it in Capricorn to go meet Saturn and Uranus, right? For the conjunction points that had just been happening that developed the internet. Because Saturn went backwards and retrograded, right? In 92, back into Capricorn. So I just want people to understand this, that there was more stuff going on then with Uranus and Saturn than ever. And ironically enough, Saturn and Uranus, when they actually met in Aquarius, which would be the craziest, was during King James and him changing the world by changing the Bible and demonology. And that's why we put out that whole video. Yeah, it's food for thought. The last time Saturn was in Aquarius was during the Rodney King riots. That's true. But it's just like getting people to get into astrology. The one with the whole Neptune was in Pisces when Rome fell. Where's that date? Which time did it fall? It was sacked. It was, there's no, that last one is the one where you go, somebody's throwing out fake shit to try and make people feel like this whole fall of the American empire or the fall of some sort of empire. The American empire did fall with Neptune and Pisces through a civil war. What do you think happened in the Civil War in the 1600s in England? A monarch got his head chopped off, and then people created their own government and didn't know how to do it, so they called the monarch back in. Like, do you think people gotta like do more? Because this is where facts come in. This to me is so sad. Just everybody sees a meme. I did videos in 2016 about let me black box you, and how every IGTV thing, they do it to get your subconscious attention in 1 millisecond. And that's what social media is doing, and that's what people are doing, and nobody's like taking the Gemini moment to go, let me look at all the facts. Let me look at all the information. Is the information true? And this is where this is all being subliminally, and I didn't even get to finish. So this Saturn here, Ceci square 45, Ceci square to Mars, and Ceci quadrant to the Sun. That is creating tension beyond all things, and Saturn's involved. And look at this, when you look at the essential dignity, Saturn has it at plus 10. So underneath this all, there is a power of control that is out there that is out to suppress the collective. And if you think that you know what it is with especially, now you add 30 degrees, you add 20, you get 40. Saturn and Neptune are almost in a 45 degree angle, right? Oh, sorry, that's 30 and 50, so it's almost there. But that you have to remember that now we have Saturn joining the semi-square energies to Neptune as much as Uranus semi-squaring. It's already been against the collective, and now it's really pouncing on the collective. And you can't see it because it's Neptune, it's deception, and it's through the media. And if you use your history, it was the people who tried to antagonize certain people and act like they're their best friend. That's the wolf in sheep's clothing. That is of now. That's what happened in 1856, which is the year that is defined as the events that caused the Civil War. And that's where we're at with this Neptune, and it's in the middle of this lunar eclipse, and it's being smacked. And what does that mean for the rest of this week? When you look at it is you take a look at Saturday real quick here. The sun and the moon come off, and the moon's going to be on the south node. So I would just say Friday and Saturday, don't lose yourself in some sort of perspective, or are you going to finally release? This moon has a moment to release these doors and close doors. Close doors that factually don't make sense to you anymore. Like, you know what? This isn't making sense. I'm not getting anything good out of it. I'm hoping too much. I'm not getting anything out of it. And it's not positive for me. Close them. Close them. Mars is getting closer to Neptune. You don't want to be you don't want to walk into a deceptive trap, into your own lies and deceit to yourself, let alone deceived by the world. If you're dumb enough to be deceived by the world and deceived by yourself, that's sheep. And Mercury is still squaring Chiron. And Chiron is about to come to 9. You're going to see right here. Boom. There's 8:56. This is on Sunday. Now what's happening? Now the sun, because now that the sun's moving off 15, so it's getting off the 135 here from Saturn. You got to remember, though, that, man, you got Jupiter and Pluto getting closer, and here's the moon in Capricorn, and now we're going to get the moon having to go through the worst speed bumps of life. And this is not, there's going to be events this weekend that are going to change you and force you to be like, did I close the doors so I could have good doors to not deal with the craziness in the outer world? Because even though it's a television show, it's a reality show, it's a planned reality show, did you keep these doors open and live your life based off the truth of a reality show? I've been on 3 reality shows. People always ask me, how fake is it? I'm like, well, I mean, they are feeding you the alcohol. They are like, oh, you know what? Let's put the cameras on those two people who are talking and actually creating reality. And if you're just like, I'm not in the mood, they don't put you on the TV and you just sit over there. So that's what they do right now. They have their notions of like, oh yeah. And they pre-did on every reality show, especially when I was on True Beauty. They look at your psychological profile. They put you in a room for fucking 8 hours and you take all the psych tests. And they have you sit with a psychologist and a psychiatrist, and they know the personalities, and they throw them into certain shows on purpose, and they know who. They set you up. They put you in a room with that person that they know is going to trigger you. Who do you think is doing that on a broader scale right now? You have to learn that this is a time in life where we have to go, who is trying to act like our best friend when they really are not? Who is trying to spit facts that keep showing that there's really no facts there? And like I said, I don't want to start getting the actual numbers out, because if people were to look at the numbers of real life situations that are going on right now, there is no genocide that is being talked about numbers wise. But I can't understand the way of life, if that makes sense. That makes sense to me. But when I look at numbers and facts, that's where nobody wants to go right now. And that's the trigger, is that people are lost in beliefs. People are lost in the way that they think things need to look. And they get lost there with the South Node. And they are lost, and it's just going to be an empty space. It's going to leave you empty. You're never going to find the answer. And you're going to feel empty in your life by you. And especially if you're living your life based off the beliefs of other people, and you're living off the belief of the media and how it should be, and you're living in the belief of your family and how they should tell you to be, and your boyfriend or your girlfriend or your wife and your husband or your kids and all that shit, and you have just put yourself into the biggest fucking box of your whole time, where you're just hoping for fucking Santa Claus to drop a gift, and it's got nothing but coal. Especially as Jupiter is retrograding in on top of Pluto for the first time in all of our lives in Capricorn. Last time that Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto here were all in the same area was in 1284. So I'm just trying to tell you all, like, are you really that blind and following the evil king or whatever? Or are you signing up right now? Because one thing that I'm predicting, and I'm just going to say right here, right now, since this is a special edition Deep Astrology, is the draft will come back. Are you drafting yourself as sheep? Right now, the military is having the hardest time to get people. One of the things that the Emergency Authorization Act does is the selective service aspect is revved up. People get put more in the offices there. They make sure that people that are, when you turn 18, you got to register to be part of the selective service. Like, people aren't paying attention to the real stuff that's going on. And they'll follow it for a belief. And they'll follow everything for a belief. Do you think Vietnam was what JFK wanted to go into? No. Well, he ended up dead in Dallas, Texas. It's hard on Sunday too, because the sun exactly still squares Mars, and that's going to happen throughout this weekend. And so if you thought we saw the peak of this intensity, and when I tried to tell you all this a week ago, before all this stuff happened, everybody looked at me like I was crazy. Like, oh, it's not going to get crazier. I'm like, it's going to get crazier every day. And this Venus retrograde took a little bit of moment, and this moon in Scorpio took a moment to kind of settle the dust down. And everybody's been getting into their beliefs now and getting lost here. And this lunar eclipse is a triggering event. It's also activating the new nodal aspect of it being in Gemini and Sag. When you move into Monday and into Sunday, really hard aspects, because the moon is going to be with Saturn in the middle of all those crazy transits that I showed you earlier. But especially, it's still making a sessi quadrant and a sessi square to the midpoint here of the sun and Venus. Venus, 10 degrees here, kind of having a rough go, because if it was 15 degrees that Saturn made a sessi quadrant, that means Venus is in sessi quadrant to Jupiter, Pluto. So this is going to bring out deep truths in relationships and values and harsh ones in a retrograde. And Mercury here is coming to it's getting, slower. And it's emotional. And the sun at 18 degrees here is squaring Mars and getting ready to square Neptune. Because when we get to Tuesday, this is it, like where you're going to realize what the hell is going on when the sun now starts to square Neptune and Mars. We have not seen that with a Venus retrograde that will sextile Chiron and bring up some weird shit with an in-between midpoint of Uranus. Did you really lose yourself in some crazy value system off a belief system that you've been just following off what was told to you by predetermined events, by predetermined people's subconscious elements of how they want you to see the world? Or did you actually follow your own unique independent value system and do your facts and look deeper at the truth and not be willing to look at the truth yourself because you just put that in the hand of other people, and because you believe that everybody's good and you believe that everybody's telling the truth in the world and everybody's giving you the truth? This is the biggest truth bomb to ever hit the world. And it's also what seems crazy is true and what seems not crazy is false. Because that's the thing, is what seems normal is going to be all these radical belief systems that do such a good job of convincing you and convincing the collective, that are injected and forced upon you. Everybody's so afraid of having something injected in them with a chip and all that shit. That shit's happening subconsciously already. Did you already sign up for that shit? And already took it? And it's already metabolizing in your soul? Because that's what we've seen in the last 2 weeks. That's what we've seen since I've been saying since Saturn in the South Node met in August into September of 2019. That it's this biggest split in the collective was coming, and you think it's going to get more closer together? This eclipse cycle is no joke. And this is a light eclipse. This is a partial eclipse, and it's very far away from the node. So to be honest with you, the first one is baby steps, Gerber. This is a Gerber eclipse, and it's that intense though, with all the planetary aspects. You think the solar eclipse on top of the new moon that's going to be on the solstice is going to be friendly and easygoing? You think that the one that follows it, that exactly opposes the sun of America, July 5th, and July 4th, depending on where you're at, is going to be friendly? Frustration is going to come out more of how you're dealing with your life. People that are out to use other people in the media presence and in the environment of our world to project beliefs and to inject people with belief systems with no facts, no data, that the facts and data that are saying that are facts and data that you can't find yourself, you need to be able to be willing to see, why can't you find it out yourself? Why can't you get the truth from yourself? Right? Like right now you can go see how many people die a year of gunshots, right? How many cops die, how many, and what race die, and all that kind of stuff. Go look at those numbers and go ask yourself, wow, what the hell? I thought it was like millions or thousands and hundreds, not 20, 30. That's it. So this is the same thing that happened with this whole pandemic, with Mercury retrograde in Pisces, and that's where Mars was, right? Because Mercury retrograde came into Pisces, and it came into those latter degrees, and then but it didn't go that far up, and I think it was 12 degrees, 13 degrees, and it retrograded backwards, and that's exactly where Mars was during all the protests and the violence. So Mars kind of pushed its way through the old paradigm two worlds always, right? In Pisces. And that's the whole thing is when you have two worlds, now we're flipped. And it's also a split in the collective. And we come into next week when I see you guys on Wednesday, and Mars is going to head into Neptune. And we are going to go into the deepest deception and media frenzy and media wars we've ever seen. And also the media using war as the next thing. It's the setup for it, though, because Mars in Aries is when the bugle horns actually rise. You have to remember, too, like there was so much Cold War stuff going on when Mars came to its retrograde part in Aries. And that's why Reagan was at the UN talking about it. And that's why he also was able to get the wall torn down, the Berlin Wall. And you need to remember that this one is not friendly. So I don't think we're going to see pictures of people excited taking down a wall this year. I think you're going to see people more trapped behind walls in their subconscious real life and physical life. So this is where you all have to be extremely careful about your beliefs, whether they're religious, political, or whatever, and not know how to look at both sides of the situation. Because this is where you might lose yourself and become sheet and might be hurted. And I feel bad because it looks like a lot of people got hurted to go create violence and put a bad name to the real injustices that were going on and created another injustice. But the people who actually support getting rid of the injustices in the world are not being violent. And that story was taken away because there was some force out there that is trying to create the narrative to do that on purpose. Through beliefs, through Sag stuff. Like, you know, South Node Sag stuff just starts throwing belief systems out, not looking at Gemini, North Node, and looking at the facts. And you can't trust either side right now, and you don't know who to trust on either side. And number two, you can't trust anything that's coming from outside the foreign world because there's some issue with foreign energy right now. And especially going in international world travel right now, you don't want to get stuck, especially with South Node and Sag. I know I was born with South Node and Sag. I've been stuck in Mexico twice where I literally lost my keys. Like, you know what I mean? Like running across the border before when I was 18. Like, I know when I go, and even when I fucking went to Canada, I had issues. They stopped me at the border for fucking 3 hours because I was an astrologer and it was right before Trump was in Hillary election. And I got stopped for 3 fucking hours and my whole truck searched. Then I went into Canada and I got yelled at for talking too loud at a normal restaurant. And I was just talking, you know, Leo King style. Then I fucking was trying to cross the border with my ex-wife and fucking her visa was out and we had to like fucking buy a ticket for her and prove all this shit just to even get fucking back into America. Like, I was born in South Node and Sag. I am trying to let you know world travel is not good for me. It is not going to be good for the world. So if you're trying to plan your world trips, unless you are going to where you need to go because factually you're in the wrong environment, vacation-wise or just to leisure-wise and all that, there's going to be so much world events here and so much warmongering. And I'm just going to be honest with you. That's what this is saying. There's too much Mars, way too much Mars. There's way too much Mars. There's way too much Mars on this Venus retrograde, way too much Mars on the sun, way too much Mars about to square the nodes, way too much with the Mercury retrograde that's going to get ready to start to square Mars when it comes into Aries in July. Way too much Mars. Way too much Mars that's going to come up and square Saturn, Jupiter, Pluto in retrograde as it's direct and as it's retrograde and as it's direct again. All with an opposition to a new moon. Like, I'm just telling you, that's coming in the fall. Like, go close all the doors of all your hopes and for energies and relationships that aren't working and all that shit and get your shit tight in your life to make sure that you are just not being hopeful for change. You need to just change your environment, look at the facts, and start creating the truth from looking at the facts through your own mind and your own self and not your beliefs and going, well, that's the facts, instead of like losing yourself and trying to understand everybody's perspective. Nobody can understand anybody else's perspective. Nobody can understand how much it feels like to pee for you, to poop, to put on hair stuff. I was just asking Craig, he got a new brush. I was like, what kind of brush is that? I don't know. I'd have never had to brush my hair. He's got long hair. I'll never be able to understand that. But if you're going to try and go get lost into this Sag world, I'm just going to like let everybody know, have a great time, because you're going to go and spin the fuck out like Roger Rabbit in Toontown. It's Roger Rabbitville out there right now. The more you get into the belief of some crazy radicalized belief systems and just don't look at the facts. And just don't, and look where your facts are coming from. Make sure that those facts are true. When you see a fact be put up on a statistic, look into the background of it and who's doing that and why is it doing that and who's funding that and who's paying that. And the number one thing to pay attention to with all this, with Mars, is with all this harshness, with all this intensity, with all this divisiveness, what is the thing that creates wars? Is money. And what countries right now all have money debts in huge? The ones that are in the wars. So, I'm just trying to prepare people. I love you all very much. Make sure that you join highvibe.tv to get me. I'm on the daily helping people out for 8 years every day. And I'm not afraid to be a truth speaker. I'm not afraid to bring up uncomfortable subjects because it's just truth. But don't be deceived by people out there who won't talk about triggering subjects and, more importantly, are trying to push some sort of agenda on you. I'm letting you make your own choice in your life. Do what you got to do. I'm letting you know, though, that the astrology says that if you're in that relationship that you believe is going to continue to work, when it doesn't, run out. Don't let your beliefs hold you back. If you're in a weird family situation, get the deal. You got to deal with that shit. If you're living in a world that's trying to tell you how to live, do you believe that? Maybe you should check the facts and see if it's true. And make sure that you're paying attention to, if you're going to help the collective right now, how can you really help the collective? How can you really send a message? And how can you do it in a way with Mars, but through the correct identification of the message that everybody would want to listen to? I might not be the master at that, so I'm probably not. But somebody out there is going to have to find a way. I love you all. Thanks so much.